Welcome back to Recap Spot. Today we'll be recapping an action-adventure fantasy movie called A Writer's Odyssey. The film opens with a shot of a gorgeous city, as a young girl named Tangerine is heard shouting for her dad. We see her dad running towards her, but he's blocked by the aura of a deity. The dad, named Guan Ning, then wakes up from the dream, and we learn that his daughter, Tangerine, has been missing for 6 years, and he keeps dreaming about her. Guan is sitting on a hill looking out over a road, when he spots a truck driving down the road that infuriates. We see the two men driving their truck slowly, when they suddenly start getting pelted with rocks. Guan runs down the hill, and we see that he's somehow throwing the rocks with superhuman speed, and he causes the truck to crash. Guan beats up the driver of the truck and shows him a picture of his daughter, asking where he took her, but he doesn't get an answer and is instead knocked out by the other man in the truck. The two men make an escape and leave Guan with the truck so that when the police arrive and discover that the back of the truck is full of kids in cages, they believe Guan is the one responsible. While unconscious, Guan dreams about his wife and daughter again. When he wakes up, he fights one of the officers in the car with him and escapes into the car of a mysterious woman who is waiting for him. The woman tells her that her name is Ling, and she knows everything about Guan, including his missing daughter and his recurring dream about her, and the strange city from the beginning of the movie. Guan is suspicious of Ling, but she offers him the chance to find his daughter. The movie then cuts to the fantasy world that Guan's been dreaming about, and we see a man named Kong Wen blowing into a horn and running for his life from bounty hunters with mystical powers. He eventually ends up at the edge of a cliff with nowhere left to run, and is nearly killed by the bounty hunters. However, his sister, Bon Ro, swoops in and saves his life. She kills some of the attackers and tells Kong Wen to run, while she holds off the rest. But he refuses. She then pushes him off the side of the cliff and into the water to try and save him. Bon Ro is able to fight off most of the attacks by herself. However, she's knocked down by an older man with unnatural strength. Kong Wen pulls himself out of the water and begins climbing up the side of the cliff to save his sister. But by the time he gets up there, it's too late, and he sees her get killed by the old man. Bon Ro was able to brutally injure the old man before dying. So as Kong Wen cradles his sister's body, the old man sits down and talks with him while bleeding out. Kong Wen learns that the old man was hired by a deity named Redmane, and he tells Kong Wen that he plans on desecrating his sister's corpse. Kong Wen is enraged and pulls a spear out of the man's back and stabs him in the heart with it, killing him. Kong Wen buries his sister and decides to go after Redmane. However, before he leaves, he hears the armor from the bounty hunter's body teasing him. The armor then rushes off of the old man's body and attaches itself to Kong Wen, revealing that it's a demonic armor that was drinking the old man's blood. The armor decides it wants to watch Kong Wen try and kill Redmane, and it shows him how to get to the circle. Back with Guan and Ling, she brings him to her office and he sees that they've found 5 different girls they believe could be his daughter. However, Guan is unable to recognize his daughter after all these years. Ling tells him that they can identify his daughter using DNA. However, first they need Guan to complete a task for Ling's boss, the owner of the Aladdin Company. Guan is tasked with using his projectiles to kill a writer named Kong Wen. Kong Wen is writing a story with himself as the main character and with a villain named Redmane. Whenever things in the story happen to Redmane, they also affect Ling's boss and cause him to faint. So her boss has decided the only way to end this is to kill Kong Wen. Guan agrees and begins to listen to the audiobooks of Kong Wen's story, only to discover that they're exactly like the dreams he's been having. Guan is able to find Kong Wen and follows him in order to kill him. However, the two end up in a library, and Kong Wen calls Guan out for following him. Guan pretends he's a fan of Kong Wen and proves it by answering a few questions. Meeting Guan cures Kong Wen of his writer's block, and he begins working on the next part of his book. Guan gets a call from Ling, who's upset that Guan is talking to Kong Wen instead of just killing him. Guan also learns about a new character Kong Wen is adding named Bai Hanfeng, and he tries to ask Ling about it, but she refuses to answer. Guan continues following Kong Wen and talks to him more, but he's interrupted when a truck driver nearly hits them. However, that driver turns out to be sent by Ling in order to stop Guan from talking to Kong Wen. Guan runs when the driver mentions calling the police. However, he accidentally leaves behind a journal he's been using to track his dreams, and Kong Wen picks it up and is inspired to write. We then see the fantasy world where Kong finds himself in a city where a festival is going on to honor Redmane. The statue of Redmane then points its finger at a nearby city, and all of the people begin grabbing weapons and getting ready to fight the other city. Kong Wen's armor explains that Redmane thrives on suffering and encourages everyone to kill each other, and people start getting mowed down by arrows. Suddenly, giant dragon balloons begin descending on the city and set it on fire as Kong Wen watches in horror. He eventually walks through the ruins of the city and sees it getting pillaged. But everyone suddenly begins bowing when Crimson Knights ride into the city on horses, and it's revealed that the Knights work for Redmayne. Guan wakes up from a dream and finds Ling, who scolds him for not doing his job. The two get into a fight, which is broken up when Kong Wen shows up at Guan's hotel looking for him. Guan meets him and Kong Wen returns his journal. Guan asks Kong Wen to take a walk with him and talk to him about his story. Kong Wen hears some music on their walk and is inspired, causing him to immediately begin writing. Back in the fantasy world, Kong Wen notices a young girl trying to save her friend, but her friend is already dead, so Kong Wen helps her bury him. The girl tells Kong Wen that there's a curfew after sunset, and she plays a song on her flute for her fallen friend, which attracts the attention of one of the knights. The knight prepares to slay the two for being out at sunset, but Kong Wen grabs the girl and begins running. The knight chases them through the city, and as he's running, Kong Wen hides the young girl and uses a decoy made of straw attached to his back to distract the knight. The knight eventually catches Kong Wen and grabs the decoy, giving Kong Wen enough time to hit the knight on the head and crack his helmet, revealing Guan's face inside. The knight is about to kill Kong Wen when the girl shouts for the knight to stop, and the knight suddenly stops moving as the sun begins to set. In real life, Guan sneaks up behind Kong Wen to kill him, but suddenly starts having visions from the perspective of the Crimson Knight. He ends up breaking out of it and pelting Kong Wen with rocks. But as he's getting ready to land the killing blow, he hears a lullaby that only his daughter would know. He realizes that a young boy is singing it, and he tries to question the boy about where he learned it. However, he just ends up scaring the kid and chasing him through a town. He eventually loses the boy, but he finds the man that kidnapped his daughter 6 years ago, and finds out that his daughter was killed, and all of the girls that Ling and her company had found were actually fakes. In the fantasy world, we see that Kong Wen and Tangerine are able to get away from the Crimson Knight, and Tangerine tells the story of Redmayne and his best friend Jiutian, who were both generals. Redmayne and Jiutian eventually fell out, and Redmayne had Jiutian and his entire clan declared traitors and killed. Kong Wen and Tangerine go back to Tangerine's home, and we learn that her parents are both dead. Some bandits come to rob her house, but Tangerine refuses to lose her parents' stuff and prepares to fight them all off. In the real world, Guan ends up calling Kong Wen to meet up again in order to finish his job. When the two meet up, Kong Wen tells him that he wrote a character based on Guan, and then he used the lullaby he heard to make a character named Tangerine. Guan realizes that Kong Wen has made alternate versions of himself and his lost daughter. Since the novel can affect real life, Guan realizes that this might be his chance to get his daughter back. So he calls Ling and tells her that he won't kill Kong Wen. In the fantasy world, Kong Wen and Tangerine prepare to face off against the robbers. However, Kong Wen's demon armor suddenly comes off of his body and easily kills everyone. The armor then turns on Kong Wen and tries to kill him. However, Kong Wen is able to control it and makes it submit to him. The armor then realizes that Kong Wen must have celestial blood, and it agrees to obey him. Guan and Kong Wen end up back at Kong Wen's house, and Kong Wen focuses on writing. Guan notices a photo of Ling's boss, Li, with Kong Wen's father, and it turns out the two were business partners until his father suspiciously died during an accident with Li. Guan realizes that Li is in danger and tells Kong to pack up so they can head somewhere safer. Ling was listening to them outside the front door and realizes that her boss might actually be evil. Ling calls Li and tries to get some answers, but he threatens her, causing her to throw her phone away and try to betray him. However, Ling is quickly knocked unconscious by some of Li's henchmen. Guan and Kong Wen head back to the library to finish the book, and the movie cuts back to the fantasy world. Kong Wen and Tangerine make it to Redmayne's place and see his army of Crimson Knights. However, they're able to sneak by them because the knights can't move at night. In the real world, it's revealed that the assassins that went after Ling followed Guan and Kong Wen to the library, and they begin to attack. Guan is able to fight them off and run away. However, he eventually gets cornered by a man who can control electricity. Using insulation, Guan is able to redirect the man's electricity and fries him. Guan then fights the other assassin who has superhuman strength and is nearly killed. However, he's saved by Ling, who shows up in the nick of time to repeatedly stab the assassin. The assassin still isn't dead and continues to fight until Guan is able to knock him out with a projectile to the face. Back in the fantasy world, Kong Wen and Tangerine eventually make it to Redmayne's throne room and call out for him to show himself. However, they can only hear a drum beating. Eventually, the giant statue in the throne room begins to move, and Tangerine realizes the drum they were hearing was actually Redmayne's heart. Redmayne grabs a large rock with one of his arms and chucks it at a pillar in order to block off the exit to the room. Redmayne smells Kong Wen and realizes that he's the son of Jiuqian, so he challenges Kong Wen to avenge his father. He even offers to bring Kong Wen to where his father was killed, and he boasts that he's going to kill Kong Wen the same way that he killed his father. Now, in an open field, Redmayne shows Kong Wen a giant tree that stands where his father was killed, and he says that he sues the tree to remind himself every day of killing Jiuqian. Redmayne then launches himself at Kong Wen and attacks, but Kong Wen and his armor split up and begin charging toward Redmayne to attack his feet. Redmayne focuses on attacking Kong Wen, but the demonic armor runs in and slices Redmayne up. Redmayne tries to crush Kong Wen, but the armor intervenes again and ends up getting crushed instead. Redmayne once again begins to go after Kong Wen, but he stops when Tangerine begins playing a song on her flute that her father told her to play whenever she was in trouble, and he would come help. Redmayne doesn't like the song and eats Tangerine with the mouth on his chest. As Kong Wen writes this scene in the real world, he's being stalked by another assassin, and he ends up getting heavily injured by the time Ling and Guan subdue the assassin. They take Kong Wen to a hospital, but he's so injured that he's unable to finish the story. Li shows up and tries to bribe the two to finish off Kong Wen, but Ling hits Li and rejects his offer. Guan then begins trying to finish the story. In the fantasy world again, Tangerine continues to play her flute from inside Redmayne, and the Crimson Knight with a cracked helmet appears out of red smoke with a Gatling gun. He begins firing away at Redmayne and is able to distract him enough for Kong Wen to jump from the large tree and hang onto the sword sticking out of the god's face. Redmayne tries to fight Kong Wen off, but the Crimson Knight jumps up and grabs onto the sword as well, and the two men slice through Redmayne's body, defeating him and saving Tangerine. In the real world, the novel is finished, and a nurse rushes in to tell Guan and Ling that Kong Wen survived his stomach wound. Guan is looking out the window when he sees something that causes him to run outside. Guan sees the homeless boy from before with a young girl, and he begins singing Tangerine's lullaby. This causes the young girl to turn around, and it's revealed that Tangerine is alive and able to reunite with her father as the credits begin to roll. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more.